The Center for Procurement Excellence is a nonprofit member organization with a mission of educating, promoting, and advocating for better RFP processes. Join CPE today and make your RFPs faster and more transparent. Membership also includes discounts to all of our training and networking events. CPE hosts a variety of virtual and in-person networking and training events throughout the year. Visit our website to get signed up. CPE Speakers Bureau is available for your regional and national meetings and professional conferences. Contact us to learn more.
Welcome to Ask the RFP Doctor, CPE's monthly web series where we discuss the latest best practices in procurement and supply chain management.
Without further ado, our topic at hand of BAFO. So what we'll do here is we will cover a bit of an introduction to what BAFO is. We will then discuss when and where a BAFO process can occur, different types of them, what do vendors think about BAFOs, and then we'll end with some recommendations, help build trust. BAFOs can be a touchy subject when it comes to your external vendors and suppliers, so just some things to think about as you proceed with BAFOs as a tool in your toolbox. Just kind of how to think about it. So quick introduction. So what is BAFO? So BAFO, best and final offer, is what we'll have popping up here on the slide. So hopefully you knew that, best and final offer. And to offer you a singular definition on this topic actually is not possible. The first warning I want to bring up is there are different types of BAFO processes. They are not the same thing. We have found that the term BAFO means completely different things to every different organization that we have worked with. And I have found that even within the same procurement group, different individuals have different definitions of what a BAFO is. So we're going to first focus on getting on the same page with some of these different types of BAFO processes. We'll do that now. When and where can a BAFO occur? So let's orient on just general RFP setup, things that you all already know. But yeah, we love acronyms here in procurement. So BAFO, it can mean a million things. In general, a BAFO would only occur after you have already received supplier proposals. And when you've received supplier proposals, you have two key periods of how you're handling those proposals. You got your evaluation period up front, which in general, extremely high level here is 3 steps. You're first taking a look at all the proposals that came in, making sure that they are responsive and responsible. Once that determination has been reached, you move forward into your evaluation of written content in those proposals. And then for many, but not all, RFPs, you'll have some type of interview or presentation or demos or some combination thereof, all of which has to get evaluated. Before then, typically what happens is you pick your single top ranked or top evaluated proposer or supplier and vendor, bring them forward into a negotiation period, which could include clarification activities, traditional negotiations, and all the contracting terms and conditions hashing out with that selected vendor to then move forward to get that contract signed. So that's kind of the general steps that occur once proposals come in. So how does a BAFO process fit into this? Here's what I'm going to walk through. We're going to walk through that there are at least 5 different times and types of BAFOs that are pretty common out there. There are 3 different types of BAFO procedures that can occur during the evaluation period itself. And you may be surprised to learn that there are at least 2 different types of BAFOs that can occur at the negotiation stage. So those are the 5 we are going to cover and define, just to make sure you're aware of all of them. I will admit that these are by no means exhaustive. I'm sure you can find other examples, probably right here on our call. There are several folks who have different setups for a BAFO than what I'm even going to walk through. This is what is described, these 5 main BAFO procedures are what's described on some of the largest procurement regulations and organizations out there. So I think they're the 5 most common, but I would not be surprised to learn that there are other options too beyond these. We've seen some other interesting things, but okay. I will reveal the 5 as we work through it together. So different types. We're going to go through the 5. We're going to do this by way of starting with the most fun thing you could ever possibly do, and that is read the FAR. Let's read the FAR together. How fun. If you're not familiar with the FAR, that is the Federal Acquisition Regulation, or FAR for short. It's basically the principal set of rules governing all United States governmental agencies at the federal level. So it's the military, yes, NASA, even cooler, and all US civilian federal agencies. If you're looking at this saying, well, I'm not a federal agency, it doesn't apply to me. Well, in procurement, we move around, we bump into other procurement professionals. You will hear the FAR brought up at some point in time. And typically, as you go down through the states and municipalities, there are lots of borrowing actions where we borrow from the FAR at times. So let's start here. This is basically the largest procurement regulation in the land here. So we'll start with this. And what does it have to say about BAFOs? Well, let's take a look at one of the older revisions of the FAR, which is pre-1997. That's when it was last updated, but I'll explain why we're going to go all the way back into the groovy time of the 90s here. So best and final offers, what does the FAR have to say? So the Federal Acquisition Regulation says this: upon completion of discussions, that would be with your vendors or suppliers, the contracting officer will issue to all offers that are in a competitive range a request for best and final offers. So in a competitive range, notice the plural for offerers. This is going to multiple proposers. We're not getting them down to one in negotiations and getting their best offer. This is multiple in the competitive range. And I want to define a few terms here and what it means in the FAR. So a key term in that sentence of upon completion of discussions. So what are discussions? Discussions are in the FAR a form of negotiation. And essentially, they take place after you've already gone through your evaluation process as stipulated by your RFP, but it's before you have signed your contract. It's kind of weird. Normally, we think that after we go through evaluations, we have rank ordered our proposals. We've got our number one. We usually invite the top ranked firm into negotiations. That's not what the FAR is saying about BAFOs. They're saying we can do BAFOs with multiple proposals after we've evaluated, and that's a form of negotiation. It's interesting to hear what the FAR has to say about negotiations with multiple offers. Here's a few things it says about negotiations. A negotiation is an exchange between the government, or by extension, the client organization, and its offerers. It's undertaken with the intent of allowing offers to revise their proposals. So we're in the sticky realm of proposals being revised after they've been submitted and scored. The goal here is to maximize the client's ability to get the best value. So it's in the client's best interest here. And here's some interesting comments the FAR has about proposal negotiations. Negotiations could apply to price. It could apply to schedule. We could be negotiating technical requirements or the type of contract itself or any other terms of that proposed contract. Basically, everything's fair game for negotiation. And negotiation includes persuasion, alteration of assumptions and positions, and a technical term of give and take. That is literally what the FAR says. So if this starts to read to you like anything can go, well, yeah, within some rules, but that's some pretty broad sweeping language. Okay. If you continue on with what the FAR has to say about BAFOs, they say, well, after you get the BAFO offers back, then in general, don't reopen discussions unless it's in your interest to do so. So it's best and final, the final part of the best and final, applying so long as you don't think you can get an even better deal as the client. In which case, if it's in your best interest clearly, then let's do it again, is what the FAR leaves open as an option here. If they're reopened, then yeah, we got to go out and let folks respond. And then, of course, the goal at the end here is find the best and final offer that's most advantageous to the government or to the client. So that's a lot of like legalese and policies, but I want to set the stage for kind of the underlying feeling that you or your suppliers may have with BAFOs. This is what the federal government says. It can be after evaluations with multiple offerers on any aspect of the project, and it includes give and take and persuasion and all fun things. So if you're a vendor, I'm going to kind of do a spoiler alert on our vendor interpretation here. Here's one way a vendor might be thinking about this. So you're saying that the federal law of the land is I can be negotiated on anything at any time against multiple competitors at the client's sole discretion. And even though they call it final, we can do it again if it's in the client's best interests according to their sole discretion. Sounds great, right? I'm a little cynical here, but that is what the language makes it sound like. Okay. Current FAR is a little bit different. They have changed their language to be a final proposal revision or an FPR. It reads very similarly. If you're not in the competitive range, you're out. But if competitive range with multiple offers can go and have a final proposal revision. So once again, it is a revision to the initially submitted proposal that we're talking about here. The reason I brought up the 1997 FAR versus the current version is in doing research, I came across a funny instance where a federal agency issued a BAFO request out to its competitive range of offerers. One of those offerers said, "What the heck is a BAFO? I've never heard of this." And so they submitted a question back to the clients and they said, "What do you mean you want my best and final offer? I already gave my proposal. What is a BAFO?" And the client turned around and said, "Go read the FAR," was their helpful advice. Well, if you actually go read the FAR now, there is no mention of BAFO. It doesn't exist. It is actually the final proposal revision, but you still have agencies 25 years later using the BAFO term, even though it's not even in their regulation anymore. So keep that in mind too, that the legacy meanings of BAFO are still percolating out there, even if it's not part of the regulation anymore. So that's a federal perspective. Basically what that one is that's kind of occurring in a negotiation period, right? We've finished our evaluations, but we still have multiple offers. That's the quote unquote competitive range of proposals, and we can essentially negotiate with them and get their best and final offer. That is just one of 5 different definitions of a BAFO. So we're 1 of 5 down. That was the longest one. Next up, let's go another large government purchasing organization, NIGP, with their procurement terms, dictionary of procurement terms. What is a BAFO? You're requesting from one proposal or shortlisted. So that kind of sounds like the FAR again. So it could be doing BAFOs with multiple again for their best prices prior to determining contract award. They also refer you to a few other terms which are worthy of quickly covering: discretion and best interest, because this sets the connotation or feeling of this BAFO request. Discretion, as recommended to go to read up on it, it's power or right to act officially in the choice or professional judgment of the clients. No say for you, vendor. And best interest, right? It's a discretionary decision made for the client entity's most advantageous outcome. So you put those 3 things together, the definition of BAFO along with discretion and best interest, and I'm not surprised to get the vendor perception again of, wait a minute, so you can negotiate me on stuff at multiple times with multiple competitors. Interesting. So just another way to look at it. That one, though, does specify, if I go back, it says it could be one proposer rather than multiple shortlisted proposers. It leaves the option open for both in this definition, which leads us to our second of the 5 options. Is it could be the final offer or the last offer from the single selected vendor or offerer, where you say, "It's been nice negotiating with you. It is now time, now that we've come to a greater understanding of one another in these negotiations, it is time for you to give me your final singular best overall offer as one final offerer." So that can happen too, where it's not multiple, it's not the competitive range, it's just a single offerer. So there's that. Another one, I just pulled up a random city just for fun. This is neither a promotion nor disparaging of the city shown, just it was a good procurement policy listed on their website, just to show you that if you trickle down into various municipalities, you get even below the federal and state levels, there's other options that pop up. They've got a definition. So if proposals come back and it's unclear, or you need additional information to make a decision, you may go out as the client and ask for a best and final offer, which is another type of BAFO. I'm just unclear on who I should even select. I need more information to even feel comfortable in making a selection. I can go back out and ask for revisions. Law insider, so 3 legal definitions of BAFOs that are out there. We can have a revision on a single offer after negotiations are completed. That's kind of the final end, like getting the singular last best offer from your top ranked offerer. That's one option. So there's your final offer of the offer at the conclusion of discussions. We can get multiple BAFOs. Notice the plural BAFOs there across multiple competing firms. So there's, again, the option for plural BAFOs across multiple competing firms. Or the third definition is when a state agency can request revised pricing from respondents. So it could just be getting revised pricing. We're going to look at 2 scenarios of revised pricing, which will fill out our last couple types of BAFOs that are possible. And it was buried in this definition that I didn't call attention to. It was, yes, if things are unclear, I can't make an evaluation judgment. I can go get a BAFO or a revision. But also there was this 2-word little nugget of what if those proposals have deficiencies? Or, well, we'll get back to deficiencies. What this means is the second BAFO here, rebaselining inconsistently scoped prices. So if you've ever been through an evaluation process where you uncovered that vendors have priced things differently, some included a certain amount of scope and other proposals did not include that scope, so therefore they are not apples to apples. Some agencies call that a BAFO if you go to try to correct or level set the pricing across the field because of something that was uncovered as an inconsistency. That could be called a BAFO also. We're not actually renegotiating or redoing proposals. We are just saying, hey, we've noticed issues and discrepancies in the pricing. Let's get that level set. Please resubmit your pricing according to this common understanding of the scope. We realized that there was something that seemed to have confused folks there. So that's one option for a BAFO too. The other one that was buried in this definition, this is kind of an all-inclusive definition, is this last part of the sentence. What if we just feel that all the cost proposals are too high? Can we then go and ask agencies to, or proposers to resubmit pricing just because we think that they're too high? And I'll give you an example. I made it anonymous. I actually have the documentation from this university. They're procuring an ERP system, and they offered an RFBAFO, talking about our acronyms here, a request for best and final offer, from all 4 of their ERP respondents. And here's a quote from that issuance that this university sent. So again, real project, real document. They said, hey, we're facing strong budget constraints. Affordability is a significant factor. And other, budget is really tight. Your prices were too high. So, hey, go use this new Excel workbook, use the cost clarifications we're providing, and give us a re-quoting of your proposal. And if anything has changed, let us know about that too. So money, 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 money. Hey, you're all over the budget. It's not going to work. We're letting you know everyone's over the budget. Let's reprice this thing out. I'm guessing they did not release their budget in the initial RFP, and then they were kind of forced to do so later. So that's another option for BAFO is, hey, we're over budget. Let's can we reprice this to be cheaper and give that opportunity to multiple firms as well. So if your head is spinning, that's because we've quickly, I think, in word salad format, gone through 5 different types of BAFOs that can happen. If things are starting from the beginning to the end here. So if things are over budget, it could be called a BAFO to go and reprice things to try to cut stuff out and get cheaper. I think that's maybe an analogy would be value engineering in the capital projects industry, but that can be a BAFO as part of a procurement process. Number 2, if we notice that the pricing and the quotes that have come back to us are not all consistent, we can try to rebaseline that so it is a fair apples to apples pricing comparison. That could be termed a BAFO at times. Number 3, we're just unclear on the evaluations and need more information on who to select and move forward into negotiations with. That could be a BAFO. Or if we did want to move into more back and forth give and take type of negotiations with a whole competitive range of multiple providers, that's a BAFO. And last but not least, many folks I think are with the understanding that a BAFO is you're in negotiations, you go back to that single offer that you're negotiating with and say, all right, we've talked. Let's finalize this offer. Let's get the show on the road and hopefully sign the contract. So all these different options. And again, I'm sure there's more. These are just the 5 that are most common in key procurement regulations. So what do vendors think about all of this? I've already tipped the hand there that a lot of this language, just reading it at face value, does not sound very nice or advantageous to the vendor community. That doesn't mean that when we use this BAFO tool, we are intending to be anything but fair and acting in the best interest of all involved. It's just that on face value, it leaves a certain impression, and it's hard to deny that, I think. So, that's the general impression. You can do whatever you want, client, to me at any time at your sole discretion without my say so. And I'm going to be on guard as a vendor or supplier is what this language tends to communicate. Even if that's not your intent, which is what I'm going to get to here shortly, because a BAFO is still a useful tool. In every single one of the 5 options that I have shown, you could encounter that scenario and need to find a way to do things. And do it in a completely fair, transparent, open, and mutually beneficial manner with your vendor community. It's just that at face value, the language can leave this taste in the vendor's mouths. I'm going to go to one more federal agency that has quite a bit of clout, and that's the FTA. They actually have a frequently asked question or fact section of their website about BAFOs. Apparently they get enough questions on this, right? That they have their own FAQ. And I want you to call your attention to a couple. This is actually the #1 question in their FAQ. Is it permissible for a proposing vendor, supplier, offerer to lower its price in a BAFO without any basis for that change, other than just trying to be cheaper? Or notice how nicely and euphemistically they word it. Other than trying to beat out the competition, aka who can go the lowest, right? Or do we have to have the price reduction that's based on something, some other changes or whatever else, right? So can a BAFO just result in the agency or client leaning on the vendor community saying, just please be cheaper without any corresponding change? And their answer is yes, absolutely. The basis for the change may be to be solely on your desire to increase your chances of winning the contract by lowering your price. It could be as simple as that, right? Much more straightforward in the answer. So let's think about the effect of this. I went to Psychology Today to get a sense of, how folks think. Because we might be thinking, BAFOs, Brian, they're a really great tool in our toolbox and we need them, and we're not trying to be weird or cause issues or make vendors feel that way. And I'm going to offer this from a psychologist who has a PhD after his name, and he's writing in the cognition section of Psychology Today that perception is not reality. True. Perception is not reality, but admittedly, perception can become a person's reality, and there is a difference there. So when we think about our vendors, we might say, look, vendors, we're not trying to do anything that is unfair towards you with the BAFO process, but their perception in general is usually a little bit more skeptical, right? That perception has a big influence on how they're looking at things. And even the psychologists say so. There's a big influence on how they look at reality, and their reality might be different than ours, despite our best intentions. Which brings us to a few recommendations to try to build trust with our vendors and our suppliers. I'll give you 3 recommendations. I'll start with #1, which is very simple, straightforward. If you've heard us at CPE before, is remember the big picture here. Don't get caught up too much in the weeds of an individual procurement. Just remember the overall goal is we want to be that client of choice across our entire portfolio, across every RFP over time. And it does just take a single RFP with something going wrong and that word getting out to harm our reputation. You've probably heard that in ethical training, right? It can take decades to build up a strong reputation and one moment to destroy it. And I think that applies here. So just remember, from a vendor point of view, especially today, they have lots of options out there. There's lots of fish in the sea in terms of opportunities for them. We want them looking at us. We need to look more attractive than other clients. We cannot be scary and have them swimming in the other direction. If they look at RFPs that have language in there, and maybe even language buried about BAFOs that sounds and reads at face value very negatively, well, that might make us look like the crocodile or the shark relative to someone else who has softened some of that in the RFP itself. And always remember, your high-performing vendors are not just waiting around for you and your special RFP. Like, they're busy. They're out getting stuff done. So keep that in mind, just kind of the big picture over time, a cumulative effect across multiple RFPs for your organization. But #2, understand some vendor strategies. I found this blog post or article trying to coach vendors on how to respond to BAFOs, right? There's a whole, cadre of articles that way. Here's some tips I'll point out. This advice was, hey, vendors, don't drop your price without adjusting scope. It may be fair to make adjustments in scope as more information is unveiled throughout the evaluation process, but watch out for that. And there's even strategies around what vendors should take away from their price to try to lower themselves, but not do so in a way that's harming their profit overly. Watch out for clients who are trying to nickel and dime you, right? So boom, right there. That's the perception of BAFOs. We're getting nickel and dimed as vendors. Not saying that that's true, but their perception might be their reality, and we need to watch out for that. And when should you walk away is actually part of the advice too. So if you think it's a little bit frou-frou when I go back and talk about client of choice, don't scare people away like this, well, then watch out. There's blog articles out there literally advising suppliers to walk away if your BAFO process is not leaving them in a comfortable spot. Yeah, ultimately, okay. So suppliers have options. Just keep that in mind. And #3, Be transparent about what you're actually trying to accomplish with your BAFO process, and ideally even avoid the term BAFO. There are completely legitimate reasons to need to go back for a revision or a discussion or a clarification throughout your evaluation and negotiation process. Every single one of the 5 instances that I covered have legitimate places in your RFP process, and you need a mechanism to address those issues when they come up. I think the simplest and easiest advice would be, if you're going to engage in any one of those 5, just don't call it a BAFO. Use more precise language that describes what you're actually trying to accomplish. Avoid this term and its negative connotations. Because remember, BAFO has at least and probably more than 5 meanings. We've covered 5 of them here, and there's more of them out there. Here's another procurement blog, just to give you a sense of things. This will be nameless. I don't want to leave any bad taste here, but this was a blog about BAFOs. So there's different types of BAFOs out there, including the reverse auction. Wait a minute, that's now under BAFOs? Well, yeah, if the FTA says that you can do a BAFO just to lower pricing, what is the logical conclusion of that? The logical extension of that is, why don't we just reverse auction everyone? Now, some of us have used that. Some of us are against that. I'm not casting an opinion one way or another. I'm just saying, procurement blog, BAFO, reverse auction, boom, all in the same breath, in the same sentence. So what this means is, if you use the term BAFO, despite your best intentions, you are probably guilty by association with all these other negative things or possible other definitions out there, because there's 5. Now I've given you 6. 6 is reverse auction. Right? So if you think, I'm not doing any of those, I'm doing what's in the best interest of my agency, I'm being fair, I'm being straightforward. Well, from a vendor who sees a bunch of other clients at all different levels of the public and private sector, they might be familiar with BAFO as a term that means other things and was used in other ways. So we might look in the mirror thinking that we're doing things nicely, and they look at that image of us and they're seeing a snake that's going to bite them potentially. That's what they're worried about. So I think I saw that pop up in the chat. Be more precise in what we're actually trying to accomplish and call it what it is. Let's not hide behind this blanket term that has at least 6 different meanings, and pretty much all of them can be taken, rightly or wrongly, in a negative way. So watch out for it. That being said, we don't mean to bang or harangue on BAFO. I think I've said 3 or 4 times now, there are every single one of the 5 I've mentioned have legitimate uses. I just wouldn't call it a BAFO. Here's another article that popped up. I don't know who Chris Cooper is, but I thought he had some good points in his article, so I'll cover a few of them here. One thing, and when you would want to use a BAFO, and it really helps you, right, is if we can have difficulty articulating our scope and requirements, and things get uncovered through a procurement process that can be addressed and handled even with multiple vendors. That's fine. That makes sense. By getting more information from the client, your vendors can prepare a better proposal. That is feasible, or that's at least reasonable to assume, that as you learn through presentations and demos and discussions, that facts are uncovered that maybe weren't perfectly explained in our scope, and the proposal can then be updated to be more effective, competitive, or solution-oriented. That's true. And effective negotiations are not about winning and losing. They are more of a collaboration to establish a better understanding between both parties, client and vendor, and that can absolutely have a mutually beneficial outcome. And if you put all of these ideas under the term BAFO, those are all good things that we should all be striving for in every one of our RFPs. So there's good and bad, 2 sides of the coin, of course. And I liked this. This is why I included it. So he said, if you do the BAFO with these goals in mind, you can change the acronym to be building a fruitful opportunity between you and your suppliers. And that's absolutely what we're out for. That's the client of choice mentality.
This has been Ask the RFP Doctor, brought to you by the Center for Procurement Excellence.